what happens at that fifth pick if they get that opportunity to land Cross. But if, let's say, an Aiden Hutchinson is there or a Kayvon Thibodeau is there, I mean, if that's the case, if one of those guys are there and they really value that edge rusher, could they go that route? But also, Sauce Gardner's an interesting one too. I mean,
It's the biggest, most important draft in the history of this Philadelphia football franchise. The JAKIB Media Sports 2022 NFL Draft Special. Live on 6abc.com from the Ocean Casino and Resort in Atlantic City. Presented by First Trust Bank, the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. IBEW Local 98, Stateside Vodka, United Healthcare, Mesa Law, 6ABC, and Budweiser, the official beer of the Philly sports fan.
You got your Mac guys here on Birds 365, McMullen and McDonald. We are lucky enough to be able to be joined by our buddy from CoverOne.net, Russ Brown, who was on with us, like I said, about a month ago. Did an outstanding job. Glad to have him back. All right, Russ, we know what we think we know what the teams are doing right now. Last minute preparation, conversation, talking about potential drafts. What do? You got your last mock out. You're not gonna be changing it or updating it. What are you doing for the next 30 plus hours?
Well, pretty much it's have a cocktail, relax a little bit, maybe do a little Kentucky Derby prep, not this weekend, but next weekend. So, we'll see how we do there. But no, I mean, I try to get this done, normally the day before the draft. I enter it into the national contest or whatever. Last year finished top 15. So we're going to try to do the same thing this year. And last year was my first time in that. So now it's just, basically get all the hate mail from fans that don't like the draft picks that I gave.
I love the hate mail, Russ.
Yep. But other than that, I mean, I think it's just kind of hanging out, maybe doing some last, bit of film that I need to watch on any types of players or rewatch some stuff and just kind of relax and enjoy the ride here.
So I'm always interested with draft guys, how you put together your sort of final mock. Is it these are the players Russ Brown likes and thinks are a fit for these particular teams, or do you take into account what you think the teams think and what their sort of process is? How do you formulate your particular mock draft?
Well, it's kind of a mix of both and kind of a little bit of everything in between. Like I try to connect the dots of maybe what certain team reporters are saying, what maybe certain scouts have told me, what maybe certain colleagues have told me. And in some way, shape, or form, I try to formulate it into what the final product might be. So, over the couple weeks ago, I was told that Evan Neal is potentially the top guy on the Jaguars board. And then over the weekend, I hear that Sauce Gardner is the guy for the Texans. But then within the last, and again, there's could be a lot of smoke to it, but within the last 48 hours, I get told that the Texans really like Derek Stingley and that they could potentially be looking to move 13 to get, potentially one of the offensive tackles if they fall. Maybe that trade spot is Carolina, as you guys were talking about Philadelphia. But then also, there was the conversation of, well, the Texans like Stingley, they believe that it's going to go Walker and Thibodeau. So I just kind of roll with that and put the mock draft together because I feel like that was the most concrete information that I had received up to this point. So kind of went from there and then just, it's kind of the team fits and player fits and where I think they should go. And, it's just a little bit of both, I guess.
Any angst after you hit send? How quickly does that first text come in and you go, I wish I would have put this guy in this spot? Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing. I had like the Evan Neal at one thing kind of put together, and I'm a betting man. So, at the time I put it together, he was plus 1,600 to be the first pick. And I was feeling pretty good about, the information of him being that first pick. But then it moved to like plus 2,500. And I'm like, well, is there still a chance for that offensive tackle? So as I was getting ready to submit that one, I was like, nope, I'm going to just delete this whole thing and restart. So I put together 3,100 words of just pure pain and pretty much put it together. But yeah, there's those things, like there's been the rumor right now that Debo is going to get dealt to the Jets and, they're going to give up a haul. And that's been the rumor for the last, day or so. So it's like, well, I'm going to still have him keep the 10th pick, but could we see San Francisco slide in there and have that 10th pick? We absolutely could, but there might be a little regret, but I've done worse in life to have a little bit more regret than a mock draft.
One of the reasons your number might have gone up as significantly as it did for Evan Neal being the number 1 overall pick, there was a rumor floating yesterday that both Neal and Raymond, 2 first-round offensive linemen, had failed medicals for several NFL teams. One report went so far as to say they're off teams' boards, which the last time I remember that happened was DJ Metcalf, and a whole bunch of teams, including the Philadelphia Eagles, wish that hadn't been the case on a report that they had. Immediately, Neal and his people come out and say, I have no idea what they're talking about. He hasn't missed one workout. He hasn't missed one scheduled visit. Where this, what is coming from, it's just not true. We know leading up to the draft, there is a pretty good content of misinformation. You think that's what this is? There's a team sitting there somewhere in the first round that wants Evan Neal badly, sees your mock and says, oh my God, he's going number 1. We have to put some info out there that he's injured. He can't play. He's going to die. We got to get our hands on this kid. How much of that do you have to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, I think that happens all the time. And I think that's one of those cases where, teams want a specific player. And I mean, because deep down, none of us really know what these teams have on their board unless we're sitting in that room. And unless, of course, there's a very credible source like a player's agent or a team, a certain type of agent or whatever it might be, or certain scout. But with that, I mean, yeah, I could very well see that maybe that team is a team like Carolina, or it could be a team like Houston. I mean, like I mentioned, that's kind of the source that I had heard, that's what they think that's going to happen at 1 and 2 of Walker and Thibodeau, so that they can take Stingley. And then, of course, are they saying this about Evan Neal so that if he falls to 6 or 7, they maybe move up and grab him? It's really tough to say, but at the same time, I've heard that they really like George Karlaftis at 13. So it's very tough to kind of figure out, because I mean, it makes sense if they want to go that route and they just kind of revamp their defense. But yeah, you deal with that stuff all the time where we're, especially at the top of the draft, not so much in the middle part of the first round and stuff, because that's always kind of a crapshoot. But I'm sure it happens through the NFL circles more than it probably would on Twitter or anything like that.
Yeah. I've never understood that kind of stuff where for this reason, Russ, we're the ones who don't have the medicals. And by we, I'm talking about reporters or draft people. We don't have the medicals. The teams have the medicals. They have the information. So who are they trying to fool? And the second part is team doctors, because you can get the medicals that everybody gets, and individual team doctors could then go, well, I'm a little bit more concerned with this than somebody else. But I've yet to meet the doctor. I always joke, there's never been an unsuccessful surgery. If you look through all the newspapers in the history of time, there's never been an unsuccessful surgery. So doctors are not one to say that, oh, I'm going to hedge my bet because somebody else. I mean, they're very, very competent people. The subterfuge I understand, and I'm going to use Charles Cross for this example, because everybody loves Charles Cross. The Giants love Charles Cross. The Panthers love Charles Cross, supposedly. Those are the teams that I think want Evan Neal and are hoping the other one takes Charles Cross. That's the kind of subterfuge. I never got the medical stuff. They have all the information. Who are they trying to fool except people like me, which is great, but that doesn't matter at the end of the day. The NFL teams have this information.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think you bring up a great point that those two teams sitting kind of right in between each other, that they could very well be trying to, I don't want to say play chicken, but call each other's bluff in a sense of, hey, you're going to do this or you're going to do that. And I think that's very true. And it could be very spot on. I mean, the Charles Cross stuff to the Giants came out relatively early. And I think that stuff came out right around the combine. And I've been kind of hearing that a lot. But again, there could be a lot of smoke to that. But sometimes where there's smoke, there is fire. So it will be interesting on what happens at that 5th pick if they get that opportunity to land Cross. But if, let's say, an Aiden Hutchinson is there or a Kayvon Thibodeau is there, I mean, if that's the case, if one of those guys are there and they really value that edge rusher, could they go that route? But also, Sauce Gardner's an interesting one too. I mean, he, as I said, was projected maybe to go 3 to Houston. And if he doesn't go 3 to Houston, does he really go 4 to the Jets? If he passes the Jets, I mean, it sounded like the Giants were very interested in him, which makes a lot of sense with Martindale's, man coverage press type defense. But beyond that, I mean, does Sauce start to fall down the board because of the run of the tackles and maybe some type of trade on something? So it's really going to be interesting. And again, is it one of those things like you mentioned where these teams are just kind of messing around with each other saying we really like this guy, so they could ultimately land a guy like even a Sauce Gardner? So we'll see how it plays out for sure.
Russ, last year's draft, first round, high picks, wide receiver position. Jamar Chase goes 5, Jalen Waddle goes 6. Eagles take Devontae Smith at 10. I've seen people say that if any of those three were, all three of those wide receivers were in this year's draft, they would be drafted before any wide receiver that will be picked this year. Do you agree with that? And what does that say about this year's wide receiver class?
I don't know if they would all get drafted before some of those guys. I mean, certainly they could, but at the same time, I mean, like Chris Olave is so consistent. Drake London's got this, 50-50 ball potential, and there's a lot to love with this class. So, I mean, I guess it's more so different strokes for different folks here, and really pick your flavor of ice cream that you want on the receiver. But I mean, sure, I could Devontae Smith go first? Could Jalen Waddle go first? Sure, those things could happen. Jamar Chase as well. Those guys obviously very talented receivers, so I'm not going to discredit them. But it still wouldn't surprise me if we had just a big group of those receivers together. If it ended up going like a Jamar Chase and then a Drake London or something like that, it just wouldn't surprise me at all. But at the same time, I mean, in this draft, I mean, I don't know if we would see the top 7 picks be a wide receiver. So I guess that kind of tells you that maybe it is a little bit of a weaker draft if we don't see one in the top 5 like we did last year with Jamar Chase. But at the same time, I mean, I think Atlanta's kind of that sweet spot for that first receiver. So is it Drake London? Is it Garrett Wilson? Those have been the most common names to them. Or do they go with just pure speed with Jamison Williams? So I think there's a lot of different scenarios that Atlanta's probably going to mess around with. But ultimately, I think that they're going to get the pick of the litter when it comes to wide receivers.
Russ, I'm going to give you 3 names of guys that really from the start of the process, everybody had sort of pegged as first round picks, but now it seems like they might be in danger of falling out of the first day. One you already mentioned, and he might be the biggest swing from teams I hear is George Karlaftis. Some teams like him. Some teams don't even think he belongs near the top of the draft. So he's one. Tyler Linderbaum, the undersized center. He's another. Nakobe Dean, the linebacker from Georgia. Those 3 players, I think, are in danger of falling out of the first round. Am I crazy, or is it a possibility?
It is very possible. I mean, it sounds crazy because when you look at just their overall tape, I mean, those guys are kind of the dominant players at their position. But I'll start with Karlaftis just simply because I don't per se see a true first round player. I would, if I was a team in the back end with maybe multiple picks like Kansas City or Green Bay, I would potentially take him. But when you watch him, he is so far from what he was back in 2019. 2020, he had COVID. He battled through that. And I think maybe, I'm not saying there's side effects from that, but it definitely looks like he's not the same player. I mean, there was times where he would hit like a push-pull move or a forklift club type move where, he's upending basically offensive tackles and clubbing and ripping his way through to generate pressure or sack the quarterback. And this year it was just like all power all the time. And he didn't look as fluid as I thought people said he was. And as far as like a guy like Arnold Ebiketie or even a Boye Mafe, he didn't look as fluid. So I think if there's maybe any concerns with any type of medical, as we've talked about with offensive tackles, is there any concern here with Karlaftis? There certainly could be. And we see it every year. Guys fall kind of out of that first round, and it makes a very interesting second day of the draft. So I think it could be the same thing with Karlaftis. We saw it with AJ Epinesa a few years back when he came out of Iowa, ended up going to Buffalo. So I think that one's, very interesting. Tyler Linderbaum, that one's a bit of a head scratcher for me. I think it's, I think it's more so positional value there. He's only going to be pegged as a center in the NFL. He probably will never play guard. I mean, he's very limited with his overall frame. He's listed at 6'2", 296. He might be able to get to 300 pounds. But ultimately, if Garrett Bradbury can go in the first round, I see no reason to why Tyler Linderbaum can. He's a terrific reach blocker, and he's certainly somebody that I think when you look at just overall technique and leverage and how he wins there, it's a big win for a team. So I think Cincinnati would be kind of that team that would make a lot of sense for him at 31. I know they have Ted Karras from New England, but they could easily play him at left guard or right guard and easily just put Tyler Linderbaum as a plug and play starter.
Well, real quick, before you get to Nakobe, Russ, does the lack of success for Bradbury, does that hurt Linderbaum?
Yeah, and it could. I mean, it very well could, because if you see a guy get to the NFL and maybe you see similar projections because of overall body type or play style, if it doesn't transition to immediate success, maybe that is why teams are being a little bit hesitant. But when you just look at a team like the Bengals, even the Packers, I mean, there's just so many different scenarios there in the back end where I think teams could always use interior offensive line help. Even Tampa Bay, I mean, Ryan Jensen can't play forever. So if that's the case, I mean, I think there's plenty of landing spots for a player like Linderbaum. And then who was the last name
Nakobe Dean.
Oh yeah, Nakobe Dean. So with him, I mean, I would be surprised if he wasn't a Detroit Lion. I think he's pick 32 or 34 for them. It's the only team that he's, I think, visited with, as a top 30 visit, which I know top 30 visits really aren't a thing, but it is important to kind of track those things down. But I don't understand what's the big deal with him as far as outside of maybe medicals with his knee, him not running. There's, questions that he runs maybe a sub 4.7, which isn't ideal, but he plays a lot faster than that. And I think that's important. So I look at him from a character perspective and just from an overall play style. I don't know why a team would pass on him. He would be the top linebacker for me. And if I'm we mentioned the Eagles all the time as a potential landing spot for a linebacker. If I'm the Eagles, I'm taking Nakobe Dean. I think I've even told McMahon this a couple of times on his national show. So I would do that if it was me, but yeah, realistically, I could see him falling out of the first round, but I don't think he'll last much longer than 34.
Two specific players who, quote unquote, run slow but play fast are Hamilton and Dean. I think there was a dancer by that name way back in the 30s. I'm not sure. They can dance on my team because they can both just flat out play. Don't care what the stopwatch said. I watch enough film. I watch them make dominating plays on the collegiate level. I think they'll do on this the same on the pro level. So if either one of those guys landed in Philadelphia, I think the Eagles defense would immediately be upgraded. I want to stay on the defensive side because we get split opinions on this. I need yours. The top two defensive tackles in this draft played side by side last year. Devontae Wyatt and Jordan Davis, both from University of Georgia. Different types of players, despite the fact that they play the same position. The position within the position is a little bit different. I know it depends on fit and scheme and what the defensive coordinator wants to do, but just generally speaking, who's a better defensive tackle, Devontae Wyatt or Jordan Davis?
I mean, it is close. They both play the game a little bit differently for sure. I would lean into just Jordan Davis because of, as we talk about with Trayvon Walker, there's so much, with traits and athleticism there that you want to bet on and the upside there that teams are going to bet on and maybe ultimately the Jaguars do. With Jordan Davis, it's kind of a similar thing. He's kind of pegged as this only 2 down interior defensive lineman, but it's more so because they didn't need to play him on 3rd down because they had so many different players and it's such a deep rotation up front. So it was one of those things where I think if a team in the NFL gets him, he's going to see opportunities to play 3rd down because why wouldn't he? He takes up so much space and he eats up double teams left and right. That's going to take a premier edge rusher if he goes to the right spot. And it could take a premier edge rusher. Let's just say the Chargers, for example. If he's in the middle of that defense, Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, I mean, those guys are going to get put on one-on-one situations all the time, and they're going to put tackles like they're on ice. So I think it's one of those things where Jordan Davis at 6'6", 341, runs a 4.7, 840. I mean, that's all great, but when you just watch the tape, he's just so dominant, and he can 2-gap, and there's a joke, around that he can actually 3-gap in a sense because he just eats up so much space. So I love his ability, and I know the Eagles would certainly be interested in a player like that, I would assume, just simply because, Fletcher Cox is on that 1-year deal. But the 3 teams that I think maybe Eagles fans need to kind of keep an eye on would be the Baltimore Ravens at 14, the Houston Texans potentially at 13, and the Washington Commanders at 11. So we'll see how that obviously plays out. But I think those 3 teams make a lot of sense for him.
Russ, when I sat down to do my mock draft, I had a tough time getting the quarterbacks in there. And
Mhm.
I couldn't get one on there till Pittsburgh at 20. Ultimately, when push comes to shove, I don't think a lot of teams, Atlanta, we know. I don't understand Atlanta's mentality. They seem to want a wide receiver, even though they don't have the vehicle to get that wide receiver the football, at least consistently. Um, Carolina, Jody and I talked about Matt Rule's got to win. He's got to win right now. He
Mhm.
can't play a rookie quarterback. Seattle, I think they like Matt Corral, but they're not going to take him at number 9.
Right.
So maybe they are a trade down candidate. Um, Pittsburgh, I think, is pretty solid. They're going to take a quarterback, and Malik Willis might fall all the way down to them. But where do you have the first quarterback coming off the board?
Yeah, they're back to back on my final mock draft at 19 and 20. I've got the Saints going Kenny Pickett, and then I've got the Steelers taking Malik Willis. I'm with you. I had a hard time kind of figuring out where those guys are going to go. And initially, like I mentioned, in my last final mock draft, rough draft, whatever you want to call it, that I ended up deleting, where Evan Neal went first. I had the Giants trading out of 7, which I believe they wanted to get out of that. I do believe they want out of that spot. And I had the Steelers moving up to take Malik Willis, but ultimately, I mean, we could see that happening. I think they could, get rid of some of that draft capital that they have for this year and next year. But yeah, realistically, I mean, we could see them fall a little bit. And I think 19, 20, maybe even somewhere between 15 and 20 just makes sense, where maybe there's some movement between the Saints and the Steelers to maybe make that happen. But yeah, I'm with you. And then I think it's just kind of the back end of the first round. I think is maybe where we're seeing maybe a Desmond Ritter or a trade up for like a Matt Corral. Maybe it is Seattle. Maybe it is Atlanta. The Packers, I don't buy the Packers keeping 2 firsts. I really don't. They're going to be the team that has 5 picks in the second round when it's all said and done, and they're going to just double down on receivers and offensive linemen and do something there. But ultimately, yeah, I think maybe we see 4 quarterbacks, but it's more so because of the back end. And I mean, obviously, we'll see what happens. But a little quick rumor that was passed my way last night. You love these rumors. I know fans will eat it up, but it was the conversation of Seattle. There's a lot of fire around them potentially moving up for Malik Willis, but I don't know how accurate that is. Obviously, I'm not there, but I would be a little surprised with that. Just watching John Schneider and that Seahawks regime down at the Senior Bowl really paying close attention to offensive linemen.
Yeah, if they want a quarterback, they can take a quarterback at number 9. I don't know that they need to move up. They get a quarterback. They're going to have their choice of whatever quarterback they want at number 9. Eagles specific question for you, Russ. Let's say the Eagles do trade up. They've got to give up some of their day 2 capital to get to the spot, target a player, and that player is a defensive lineman. Won't even go so far as to tell you who it is, whether it's a defensive end or one of the 2 Georgia defensive tackles, but it's a defensive tackle. They still have needs, specifically outside, cornerback, wide receiver. If they've got to give up day 2 assets to get to the point to get the guy they want to target in and around the top 10, which of those 2 positions shows better depth? If the Eagles aren't getting one in the first round, either corner or wide receiver, which one is the better bet that they'll be able to find somebody who can step in and play their rookie year, contribute at one of those 2 positions later in the draft because of the depth of the position?
Yeah, I would say it would be wide receiver. So, I mean, if you're an Eagles fan and they end up going defensive tackle and corner in the first round, I think that's a good problem to have, because I think wide receivers a relatively deep draft. I mean, if you get into the second day of the draft, you got the option of maybe David Bell, Christian Watson, Sky Moore might be there from Western Michigan, who's been kind of shooting up draft boards. Calvin Austin out of Memphis. I mean, there's a lot of different types of receivers out there. George Pickens has been a popular name, but the rumor is that a lot of teams have him off the board because of a lot of character concerns, and the way he interviewed it was not great at all. So it wouldn't be surprising if he slipped a little bit, and if he does slip, does a team like Philly make a lot of sense for him somewhere on that second day? So yeah, I mean, if I'm the Eagles, I'm trying to. My sweet spot for them would be Jordan Davis and then Trent McDuffie. If they can somehow land those 2 players, I think it does wonders for their defense. But I don't know if McDuffie's going to be there. But I do have them getting Jordan Davis. So obviously we'll see how that plays out tomorrow, if I'm right or wrong.
Yeah, I do think they have a significant interest in Jordan Davis. Probably have to move up a little bit because I do think Baltimore is looming pretty heavy. They
Hmm.
love that type of player. They did bring back Michael Pierce, but I don't think they can count on that long term. So I think they would have to make the targeted move up. But I'm going to talk about the splash move up, Russ, because you probably caught the end of it while you were in the green room there. But Jody and I were talking about Carolina moving down. If the Eagles were to move up that high, what player do you think would be targeted at 6 overall in that type of position?
It could certainly be that splash move for a receiver. I mean, is it Jamison Williams or Drake London? I think Drake London would be a great fit there to play opposite of Devontae Smith, that bigger body guy, 50-50 ball master and has that basketball background. So I think that they would be really interested in a player like him. But at the same time, could it be for maybe a potential cornerback, like I mentioned, if Sauce Gardner starts to fall a little bit? Would he make sense for that defense? I think he would. I think he'd be a great fit there. And if Derek Stingley's gone, I mean, could Sauce be the guy that they ultimately move up to try to get? I think that's very possible. But other than that, I mean, is it a potential edge rusher? I mean, does somebody like a Kayvon Thibodeau start to fall down the board, or an Aiden Hutchinson? One of those, if Trayvon Walker goes one and the other one goes two, somebody's going to have to fall a little bit. So if they do, I mean, is it the move for the edge rusher? I think all three of those potential players or positions make a lot of sense for the team, and I think that would be maybe the splash move that they ultimately do. I would definitely be shocked if they moved up to get a quarterback, and I'm sure you could probably agree with me there. I mean, I don't see them
Yeah,
doing that,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I would have to say one of those top guys at the top of the draft for Sauce or Kayvon.
All right, Russ. No, the Eagles, or I should say, I don't believe. I don't know anything, but I don't believe the Eagles are in this conversation. The year before last, Jonathan Taylor went top third of the second round, but a day two pick. And all he did this year in his second year in the league was score 20 touchdowns, 18 on the ground, two more on via the air, and was absolutely in the conversation. If the Colts hadn't done an El Foldo at the end of the season, he would have gotten significant MVP consideration. Is there a Jonathan Taylor light back in this NFL draft? The guy who's going to get picked as one of the top backs, probably someday, somewhere in round two or day two. Is there a guy who's even in the same zip code as Jonathan Taylor for your evaluation this year?
It would be close with maybe Kenneth Walker. I probably would still take Jonathan Taylor. I loved him when he was coming out, but I am a big fan of Kenneth Walker. I think he gets really overlooked in this draft. And I mean, I get some of the Brees Hall love, but at the same time, I mean, I wouldn't be drafting him in the first round if I was a team like the Bills. But if Kenneth Walker ends up falling to, let's say, pick 51 there in the second round, I think he would make a lot of sense for a team like the Eagles if they were interested in it. But really, any team on that second round that's looking for a running back, I think he would make so much sense. He's so fluid with his lower body. He does just this crazy flexibility to kind of change direction. And I want to get up and like show you guys, but I can't because I'm one too old for that stuff. But it's one of those things where I love the burst with him. I love the ability to just kind of absorb contact. He truly is somebody that I think you can give the ball 6, 7, 8 times in a row and he won't get gassed. He'll get knocked for not catching passes out of the backfield. Only had 19 in his career. But at the same time, Jonathan Taylor didn't catch a lot of passes out of the backfield, and he's doing just fine. So I think Walker kind of falls into that similar range and falls into that similar conversation because of some of those things.
Russell Brown, follow him on Twitter. You see it right there at Russ NFL Draft. Cover1.net. Read his final mock draft and send the hate mail to where, Russ?
just send it at Russ NFL Draft. And yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Now, before you go, last one from me. Jody might have a last one, but I want to surprise. My surprise, I'll give you the example, is I don't know if a lot of people know, but Luke Bickle, the head coach at Cincinnati, is very close to Mike Vrabel.
Mm-hmm.
And I have Desmond Ridder matched up with Tennessee late in the first round. They don't need a quarterback right now, but Ryan Tannehill's not, I think we all know, is there's kind of a ceiling there. So that's kind of my surprise in the first round. Any strange bits, maybe player most people don't have going in the first round? Got any surprise for us in the first round?
Well, that certainly would have been my answer as well. That's what I have also. With Fickle and Vrabel, those guys are very well connected back to obviously their days at Ohio State. So I think the Titans going quarterback makes a lot of sense. When you look at it, Ryan Tannehill's not getting the job done in the big games. They're not winning playoff games. Desmond Ritter's a winner. He's won 44 career games, third most all time in NCAA history. And I think he's somebody that's mature. He's ready to go, and he can get that team over the hump if they really need him to. So I think that's the key there. And also, if you move Ryan Tannehill and you clear up, let's say, I want to say that the cap space clearing that they would do is about $20 million or so. So that's money that you're going to need for a player like AJ Brown to keep him. So I think there's a lot that kind of goes into favor there. Getting that rookie contract on the quarterback position for 4 or 5 years makes a lot of sense for a team like the Titans that are built to kind of win now. So I like that one as well. I'll kind of go with another surprise, Matt Corral, Atlanta Falcons. I know the Falcons have done a lot of research on him, and they've done a lot of research on just quarterbacks in general. And like I've said all show, I don't think the Packers are going to keep both picks. I think maybe there's a trade where the Falcons, who have 2 second rounders and a third rounder, they could give up a second and a third to move up to pick 28. And the pick would be, the Packers moving out of the first round, and the Falcons would ultimately take Matt Corral, the quarterback out of Ole Miss. So I think that would be some surprising stuff at the back end of the first round that might happen. And then just lastly, Karlaftis falls out of the first. Maybe we see like a Boye Mafe or an Arnold Ebiketie for like a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, who could certainly be looking to upgrade edge rusher. Frank Clark's been kind of on the rumor mill hot seat for that team all off season. And obviously Mike Dana's only playing opposite of him. So I think they want to upgrade there. So ultimately, I think we could see some type of edge rusher there for the Chiefs.
By the way, both you guys are wrong. There's no way Tennessee's going quarterback. They're gonna run Tannehill out there again this year. They had the best record in the AFC last year. They're not taking a step back to take 2 steps forward down the road. So I disagree with you two guys there. We'll find out tomorrow night. That's the best part of it. All right. Everybody always loves this question if they're a draft content creator like yourself. Give me your day 3 guy. You've checked out other people's mock drafts. They either have them undrafted or you've got them in round 4 as compared to other people who have them in round 7. Who's your guy day 3 that's going to be starting in the National Football League in 2022, and you think everybody else has underrated and you've got him pegged exactly where he should be?
Yeah, I mean, this one's a layup for me. That's Luke Godeke out of Central Michigan, the offensive tackle. I love his skill set. He is certainly somebody that could easily go on the second day of the draft. Maybe he goes somewhere in that 3rd round range, but I just love his skill set. He gets often compared with his teammate Bernard Raymond out of Central Michigan, but I prefer Godeke over Raymond. I mean, he is just some of his tape is just kind of teach tape for offensive tackle technique. I mean, he's always so square. Everything is under control. He's consistent with his pad level, his hand placement. And I mean, his feet will have to get a little bit faster, but he looks like a starting right tackle at the next level. And I love his skill set. I would take him over Bernard Raymond. And I think when it's all said and done, I think Godeke will be the better of the 2 offensive tackles out of Central Michigan. And then just another offensive lineman that will certainly go on the 3rd day of the draft is Cordell Volson out of North Dakota State. This kid was a walking double-double back in high school. I mean, he had 35 career double-doubles, which was the most all time. He had 33 blocks in a season. He is a beast. In 2019, he had over 100 knockdowns for the Bison's offense. So he's somebody that when you watch Trey Lance, you watch Dylan Ray Dunes, you watch Christian Watson over the years, he consistently caught my eye. Right tackle, 67, looks like a guard. Probably going to be just because of his footwork, but he's aggressive. He's mean. He can down block. He can reach. He can do just about anything you need him to do. But I think he could be somebody that if you need offensive line help on the 3rd day of the draft, you could probably plug and play him at right guard if you really needed to.
If I knew Central Michigan's offensive line were as good as you're saying,
yeah, how about Central Michigan?
I would have taken them against Washington State in their bowl game this year. Could have made some money, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, there you go.
Russ, good stuff. You kind of mentioned it in passing yesterday. We're less than 2 weeks away from the Run for the Roses. I know, like you, like me, you're a horse racing fan. Who are you leaning toward in the Kentucky Derby?
I mean, obviously it'll be tough to pass Epicenter. I mean, he's so good. He's won so many different races and so many key races. I mean, I'm obviously really intrigued with Cyberknife and how well he ran at the Arkansas Derby. He's won back-to-back races now. So I think it would probably be some type of combination there. And if I had to maybe throw, I don't know if he'd be a potential long shot, but maybe, just maybe, Tiz the Bomb would maybe be somebody that maybe hits the board. Maybe he runs second or third. The only thing that worries me is when he ran on dirt back in February, he placed seventh, and then he ran synthetic and he won both those races. So I know that's going to make a little bit of a difference, but we'll see. It's really my favorite 2 weeks of the year here. We got the draft, we got the Derby to follow. It's a bunch of horse racing. We got Mountaineer back running during the nightcap during the week, so I got something to bet.
You got to get out of Mountaineer. You got to do it. You can't be betting those horses at Mountaineer. They're just, the quality of the Kentucky Derby as compared to Mountaineer is night and day. But
I got to build a bankroll.
I like your Cyberknife, Brad Cox. I know he had to wait 10 months for it, but he is your defending Kentucky Derby winning trainer. And he told me months ago that Cyberknife was his best horse. So I do like that selection. Best of luck on that. Enjoy the draft these next couple of days. Russ, thanks for coming on. We'll get you on after the draft is over and done with, and we'll get a review out of you. Thanks, bud.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.
Russ Brown here with us on Birds 365. Yeah, it's funny because I had him on as a guest, and I tweeted it out, and he hit me with a DM on Twitter. Didn't know he was as big a horse racing fan as he was. He wanted to pick my brain about horse racing because he listens to my show and he knows how much horse racing I talk as well. We don't do that here on Birds 365. But if you want, don't you got my Twitter? You can send me any horse racing questions you want on Twitter, which is better.
You're the expert there. I got to defer to your knowledge.
Better than the hate tweets we get from time to time here on Birds 365. Horse racing queries always accepted and look forward to. All right, we'll come back. We got that much more to do. Mike Tanier from Football Outsiders is going to join us in the next upcoming hour. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We are the Mac and Mac Bird 365 guys.